First, I was gonna say, it's not recording. It just wasn't. Okay, let's get this show on the road. Check your microphones and see if they're on. Chris, put them in there, if they weren't turned on. Not that there's anybody here to hear us.
No, but I will tell you, it does help when you talk in the microphone, watching it online. Paul.
So I want everybody, so look over here, I got this new microphone stand that I'm checking out with Leroy. So that your microphone can stand back here and be over you, and you still have your papers. And so Leroy's checking it out, because Leroy's not so soft, you never hear him, so he's our guinea pig. And if it works well, I'm gonna order more of these for everybody else. Okay.
Okay,
Yeah, I think it needs to go higher than Paul.
Well, yeah, there you go.
Oh, yeah,
how's that?
that's much.
Yeah, I think even I can hear that difference.
That's the difference.
Okay. Okay, so this is the work meeting, the town council work meeting, Thursday, June 8th, 2023 at 6 p.m. We have 11 things on the agenda. Oh, there's a 12th one that I need to talk about that I forgot to put on here, and I'll write it down. Let's do the East Water tank. I will put that in before number 10 or 11. Okay, so the first thing is the revision of chapter 60. And that has to do with no more short-term rental subdivisions. And he wrote a change, it's in here, it's in everybody's here for you to look at. I'm not sure I like where he put this, but Gene and I had talked. I asked him at not our meeting this week, but our meeting last week, or the week before, one of the two, if he was going to be consistent with what he had said before, which was if we got these 4 subdivisions approved for short-term rental overlay, that he was okay with removing any more short-term rental overlay subdivisions. And he said, fine, that's what he said, he would stick with it. And so he and I discussed, and Paul and I discussed what was the easiest way to amend chapter 60 without taking away any of the stuff in chapter 60 that's the regulations, because that was his big concern. So what we realized is all we need to do is add a little section to chapter 60 that basically says what he has written here on this proposed ordinance, where he says effective June 2023, the SPR development overlay zone is designated as closed. Accordingly, the town will not accept any zone applications from property owners seeking to rezone their property with an SPR development overlay zone designation. Nothing in this limitation shall affect the validity of existing developments which have applied for and received the SPR development overlay zone designation prior to the effective date set forth above. Now, the only thing, I was looking at this afternoon, we just got this afternoon, like about 1 o'clock. He put it as section 60.03. And I was hoping, because so I've got 60.02 pulled up. And I was kind of hoping, I was thinking that this should be at the very beginning. And the way he's put it as 60.03, it's at the very end of this whole section. So it's talking about these SPR, after all the regulations. So people would have to read all the way through to get to that bottom thing to see that there's no more. I feel like this should be at the beginning before people start reading it. thing. But I think 60.03 may be the wrong place for it. I was thinking like maybe.
Is there,
Yes, like 60.01 or something like that.
is there already one?
No, all the numbers right now are even numbers. And that was so that we could have space to put in something with an odd number if we needed to add. So I feel like it should be like 60.01.
Cause it's ending it and. then
Yes, ending it,
needs to
so
let them know.
right off the bat, before they spend a lot of time reading this, then to discover, so I feel like it should be at 60.01.
So are we saying that we're ending short-term rentals or the RHS as well? Or
No.
put parentheses, this does not include RHS.
No, and this is why I feel like it, well, 60.04 is the RHF.
Right.
And this does not apply to them, and that's why somehow I wanted it under this section so that people would realize it's only that.
Why don't we just put it in 60.02? As like the leading,
Well, the first one's the short-term rental purpose,
just put it right underneath the.
right underneath that before we
Just
say the
start off
purpose.
with, it should end with it, it says, this is closed as of this date.
Yeah, I just, so.
Yep, you just do 60.01 applicability.
Well, that's,
But then
Okay.
should we put a parentheses that says it's short-term rental only? Just so there's no confusion, because somebody's gonna ask.
and I understand about the 60.01,
Yes,
but to Misty's point, that somebody's gonna ask and say, what does this have to do with RHF? When it's got nothing to do with RHF. If it's under 60.02, which is all the stuff to do with short-term rental overlay. It's like it needs to be a subset under
Could you Take
60.02.
this 60.02 short-term rental STR and then hit enter and move the purpose down as
A subsection.
like a Roman numeral 1 or
Mhm.
whatever, however our numbering is, and then put that one
Right
above it as
before it.
applicability,
Mhm.
using Paul's word, applicability, and put it there.
That could work. Because I just feel like it needs to be under the heading that says short-term rental purpose.
It
A
would make
short-term
it-
rental.
it would make it smoother.
Smoother. Mhm. Now, the only thing that, he did not put in here, he may have missed this when he was making notes when I went and met with him. There was one thing he did not put in here that I asked him to include. And we can, talk to him about it at the town council meeting, the 20th. I wanted something put in here to say that the existing, and this will fit with your thing about wanting to set a cap, which we can do separate, a separate ordinance on that, and we can get this going, and then you can do the ordinance about the cap that you wanted to do.
Do we need to cap it if we're ending it? Because this is ending it, right?
This is ending it for the short-term rental subdivisions.
Right.
Was your cap just on the subdivisions, or is where your,
Well,
was
so
it
it's
cap?
not a problem in the HRZ zone,
No, it's not.
and if we, and if it's not, if we should be, because we don't really need a cap if we're not gonna keep it commercial. I don't know if that's an option, okay, for you to keep it that way.
You're about to say something, Paul?
yes, I'll stand by what I've said all along, is that short-term rentals are mini motels. So they need to be treated as mini motels, so treat them as the same as in the commercial zone. But if you're doing it in other zones, then you're affecting what we're gonna be discussing is affordability. Anytime you have short-term rental, if it's even in HRZ, it's gonna affect the availability of housing in the community and,
So are you saying that you would like to have a cap?
I'd like to eliminate it from the HRZ, but.
Well, right.
In lieu of that, I'll accept the cap.
Okay,
Yeah,
all right, and that would be a separate, that's why I was telling Misty, if she wanted to work on a cap, that could be a separate,
And
that could be a separate ordinance that we could work on, but right now, this is just stopping any more subdivisions, and that's
we
the
know
first
to
step.
be the numbers again.
This is stopping any overlay.
Yes,
Yeah.
yes. The one thing that he, so anyway, there's one thing that he did not put in here, and this is why I was leading into the thing about the cap. That when we made the notes about what was going to be in this paragraph, there was one sentence he did not put in here, and he may have missed it from his notes that he was making when we were talking, is I wanted this to say, none of the short-term rental development overlay zones can be expanded beyond what they are right now. That I don't want them, that, they can't come in and say, I'm gonna buy this neighboring piece of property and extend my short-term rental overlay zone, because that would bring in more short-term rental overlays. I mean, more, short-term rentals. And so he was going to include that in the sentence and he did not, but we can always add that later.
Why don't you draft that and put it in there for him to look at on the 20th?
Okay, because I was debating, I was gonna ask if we should put,
I think it's already covered.
I
The
don't
town
know.
will not accept any zone change applications. And you need a zone change application to expand it out, unless you're gonna expand it already on that. The zones that you have.
You could put seeking to rezone or expand their property within STR development.
Okay.
overlay.
Then, yeah, we could just say
Add
or
the
expand,
sentence,
Yeah.
I mean, not the words.
just or expand.
That one.
Yeah.
But you're right, you're saying,
Keith would probably say, we can ask him on the 20th.
that he say it's covered
He's probably gonna say it's covered because you have to make an application.
to rezone that.
To rezone that.
Yeah.
And the only time you would be is if you already have a zone. HRZ zone, you're just expanding the existing number of homes there. That could be possible.
Okay, so what I was thinking was, since he brought it, he got this to us, that we could send it to planning and zoning for them to discuss at their next meeting, and then do a public hearing in July or something like that. But, I don't see why we couldn't go ahead and send it to planning commission right now.
So,
Okay, all right. So how are you guys feeling on this? Because this is not affecting the four that have applied and been are in the process. This doesn't affect them at all. So,
Yeah, I feel like as long as it doesn't affect our current.
and it doesn't, because it says it doesn't. Nothing affects the validity of existing developments which have applied for and received the overlay designation prior to the effective date set forth.
Is there only one that has not received it?
No, there are two that have been told if you come back with your final plat, then they get it.
Okay.
They got it conditional upon getting their final plat.
So they are still,
They're in the process.
they're not included in this.
So who are the four just,
Zion's Edge is already done.
right,
Observation Estates. The one up above,
yeah.
Up there. and, the guy up Pockettville Road. Those are the only four that have come in and.
So Lay's in the Pockettville Road that haven't. Waited it up.
Correct,
Right.
but
Landing and both.
But they are already in the process and been told, just come back and get your final plat, so this won't affect them. Yeah. Okay, so we'll make a note on this for Crystal to just stick this on the agenda for planning commission for them to discuss. And hopefully set a public hearing in, July or August, whatever they come up with. Okay. So that's item one. And then we'll discuss, and then we'll talk about it at the meeting, on the 20th with Heath to verify that he thinks this covers everything about the rezone, or do we add the words or expand? Okay. Okay, second item. I'm thinking that since we have this new development review process that we've added to the conditional use permit process, right now the fee is $400. And so we had a meeting today, Jean and I had like a first meeting with this person about this project here that we're gonna talk about in a little while. On item 4, we're gonna talk about this map that's on the table. But we had a meeting today with this guy. And we told him everything he needs to do and come back for another meeting. And then after that, he might have to come back for another meeting. And so by the time we do all this, this is taking up time. And I feel that the $400 fee for conditional use permit is too low. And so I talked with Gene about it, and Gene and I went over the agenda this morning because he wasn't gonna be here tonight, and he told me his feelings on everything. And he was in agreement, if he thought this was a good idea to just, to increase the fee because the process now takes more meetings and more time and more effort. So. Any thoughts?
If we're gonna look at conditional use permits, and I agree, the fee should probably be increased. But we should look at all our planning permits to see if the fees are commensurate with the reasonable cost of running those permits through. And if they are, we need to increase those.
Okay, and I don't have any disagreement with that, because to be honest with this development review process, as we went through it today, and we're gonna have another couple meetings with this guy, but we were wondering if we actually if there's even anything, and you'll see when we talk about this, if there's even anything for him to apply for conditional use permit on. Because some of what wants to do with this is permitted uses, and, I have no idea what this is, so I'll just say no. We don't think he's gonna go through this process, yet I don't think there's anything he's doing in here that requires a conditional use permit. But we don't know that for sure. We'll talk about it and get to this.
And since we're contemplating, I know it's the legislature's decision to raise the fees.
Yes.
But would you like the planning commission's recommendations on those fees?
Well, some, yes, some maybe not, some may be things that don't go through the conditional use permit process, which means they wouldn't go to planning commission. Some might, we'll have to look at all the fees and see which ones.
If it's down the reason though, that if our zone change is $1,000, we should try to at least that for a conditional use.
That's
That requires the conditional use requires a lot more.
A lot more work, and that's what Leroy, because when Leroy came by this morning, I talked to him about this, we thought $1,000
At least,
at
I
least.
was thinking too.
Okay, and the idea too is that this would stop, and this is what Gene said when he and I were talking about this topic. He was talking about how, all the people that come and do the process and then, or they start it and then they drop away. And this would stop a lot of the people that are not really serious, if that's the fee. So, okay, so we'll proceed with reviewing all the fees for that have anything to do with development. Is that what you're saying, Paul? Anything to do with development?
Yeah.
I think historically, we've always looked at the fees at the beginning of the new fiscal year. So this is
This would be a perfect
the
time.
perfect time to do it.
Okay, item 3 on the Pocketville Park name change. Let's see, how did we don't. Okay, this is what I need to let you guys know. So we've done some research on changing, about parks. And what we were told is, that we have to look at the underlying zone. And I'm like, oh, if you look at all our parks, they're all in rural residential. They're not even a park zone. They're just rural residential property. So they're not technically a park. The only way anything that we have is a park is because we stuck the name park on it. And technically under the law, that's what it is. They're just rural residential, and we call them a park, we made them a park, we put in, I'm not suggesting right now that we create a park zone. I don't know, we only have a few, but the BMX park is not really a park, it's rural, it's an open space. A town park is rural residential, this is rural residential, and, Falls Park is in open space, both of those. But we don't actually have a park zone. Anyway, when I went back and looked at how we chose the name Pocketville Park, I went and got the minutes of the meetings back then. And all we did is, say, hey, we got this land that was donated to us from the bank that had owned Sierra Bella. And they said, and you know, Sierra Bella had a good park. They had put it up as a park in their, part of their open space when they were doing the, subdivision. And they don't, then when the bank took over, when the, developer lost it, the bank took over, and the bank just gave the land to the town and said, here, and Bruce was like, hey, let's make it a park. And that was pretty much the extent of it, and then we asked people to come up with some names, and people voted, and we announced at a town council meeting that Pocketville Park had the most votes, and so therefore it's Pocketville Park. And that was the extent of it. There was no resolution, there was no nothing doing this. So if we wanted to change the name, Heath Snow recommended that we do a resolution. And we talked about making it an event center, remember? We talked about that in the past. And so he had suggested that we could do a resolution in the meantime, assigning a name that's on a temporary basis while we then, put it out for a vote for people to come up with names if they don't like what we picked. And because we could just throw that one in, have maybe 5 names for people to look at, and let people suggest something. And so we would go ahead and just do a resolution in the meantime, so that its name is changed and we're not using the word park. So that's what that's about. Just letting you know, I was gonna prepare a resolution to put on the agenda at the meeting on the 20th. And it would say that this was a temporary name while we decide on one. Thoughts? You have no opinion? Yeah, Lee forgot it. He had said that's my meeting from the county, here's Gene. Item 3, yeah, he said he was fine with us doing that. And that way, of course, as I said, by changing the name park, then that allows the 2 commercial zones on properties on each side more uses that they can do with the property than they can if they.
You're thinking for a temporary.
Somebody had suggested the name Hollow, Pocketville Hollow, or we could call it The Hollow. I don't know, that was just a temporary name that we could call it, but it's not, because it goes down like that. I don't know, Dale, Cove, you know, something. A hollow sounded not too bad.
I like Pocketville Hollow.
Yeah, I do too.
Okay.
I think we should stay with the name Pocketville. Maybe add all over.
An ad hollow, okay, because I could see, things saying, you know, an event at the Hollow, or,
Yeah.
you know, I could see something like that. And it could be, I don't think there's anything else around here that's called Hollow. No, if you were ever advertising something saying, we're doing, you know, a concert at the Hollow or a play or an event of some sort, that everybody should eventually know that, oh, that's in Virgin, you know. Because I don't think there's anything else around called Pocketville Hollow. Okay, so that's item 3. If you guys are, I'll stick that on the agenda then for the 20th. Sounds like you guys are okay with that. So the next thing is 4. 4 is a possible workforce housing zone. So in the space of 1 week, I had 2 different people come to me wanting to do workforce housing. And both of them had very similar concepts, and they are not even talking to each other. I thought it was funny that they both came to me with a similar concept and they don't even know of each other. And, so what they both want to do is tiny homes. And they would have more than one on an acre, and they were asking, can we do this? And I said, well, the way I read our agreement with the Water Conservancy District, we can, if we comply with this, the one section that talks about, it says the town shall not approve a project density of less than 1 unit per acre, except for RV parks and planned unit developments may be allowed if engineering studies reveal that there is no significant pollution to groundwater sources as a result of installing a community septic system or other treatment facility. So Heath and I had a meeting with the Water Conservancy District, Monday. And I talked with Zach about this, and he said, yes, this would qualify if we were to do this workforce housing that was proposed, that would be like a planned unit development, and as long as an engineering study reveals there's no significant pollution to groundwater as a result of a community septic system, that the Water Conservancy District would have no objection, but there has to be this groundwater, there has to be a study. And then he said, but you guys are going to be limited to this issue with the body politic. I said, yeah, we know about that, that's a separate issue. But the two people that came to me and said, we want to do this workforce housing, and I said, the more I thought about it, I said, you know, maybe, given what they were proposing, that we might want a workforce housing zone. And I talked to Heath about it, and Water Conservancy District, and they both liked it. They said it was possible as long as a groundwater protection study is, I mean, there were all sorts of things we'd have to put in the zone, such as a groundwater protection study, because it would be increased density. And there would be other issues, such as that these things could never ever become short-term rentals, that they can only be workforce housing. So right here, this plan that I have here for us to look at, as you can see there, the part that increased density right in the center is where they wanted to do workforce housing. And so I'm gonna let you guys in the audience look at a copy if you want to see what they're talking about. I've already seen it many times. Copy it is, if you guys are at all interested. She gives the speaking to others at the hour. He is not, we just got that. And so there was another place in town where somebody else had approached me about doing a very, very similar project with workforce housing. So my thought was, we possibly need a zone. So what, let's see, what Jean said was, obviously, any zone such as this one that they want to do would be on hold until such a groundwater protection study is done. But he wondered if we're all in favor that we should have planning and zoning go ahead and start working on a zone, because it's going to take a little time for these guys to even do the groundwater protection study. So we've got time to kind of play around with a potential workforce housing zone. So what are your thoughts on anything like that?
Is it a zone or is it an overlay?
Well, that's what Heath and I talked about, and that's what Leroy asked, would it be a separate zone or would it be an overlay? And it just depends on what we want to do. If we want a zone, if we want an overlay zone, how we want to handle it.
And how do you define workforce housing, and how do you ensure that it remains into perpetuity workforce.
Well, that's what gets written into the whole thing. And like for this project here, we've told them we're gonna do, if it goes through, if their groundwater protection study shows that they can do this, that we're gonna have a development agreement. And that in the development agreement, we would say that it cannot ever be short-term rental. That it has to be workforce housing, and we did ask them today when they were here, were they going to sell these or would they be rentals? Because our preference is that they be rentals, because if you sell, once you sell something like that, you lose control, and so we would want this workforce housing to be a rental. Not something that is sold to, if the individual unit is sold. And he said each of those, what he has on theirs, each one is about 2,000 square feet. That would include the tiny home and like a garage for them to park their. So you certainly, this is not for us to make a decision today. But because two different, well, we can't make a decision anyway, this is the work meeting, but to put it in everybody's mind, because we know we want workforce housing. We need it. We would like to have it, but we can't do it without increased density. And the only way to do it, according to our Water Conservancy District contract, is a groundwater protection study. And speaking of groundwater protection studies, we talked about that at the Water Conservancy District. And I asked them if we join the water pooling agreement, and I have water coming up as item 6, but I'll just talk about it now. If we are allowed to join the water pooling agreement, they're going to keep in any agreement with us that we still have to have this limitation on development. And they would like a groundwater protection study. I said, I want a groundwater protection study. We put it in money for it, and they said yes. That they would contribute to the cost of the groundwater protection study for the town. And we talked about what engineering firm would do the study, et cetera, et cetera. And yes, I'm losing my train of thought. Yes.
If they have this would be residential, you'd have to change it to residential, because it would be less than an acre and not rural residential.
Well, that's why we're talking about workforce housing overlay zone.
Well, no, change the ground to residential and then do a workforce housing overlay on top of the residential zone. Because they're less than an acre, which
Well,
would put it at
that's-
residential.
But the whole piece of property right now is a 60-acre piece of property. And so because they want commercial up at the top, workforce housing in the middle, and then a subdivision down here with 7 houses on this 5-acre, this 60-acre parcel, they're trying to do 3 different things. And so that's why we said a development agreement would be probably the appropriate way to go. The town council has to vote on a development agreement. And so they have a lot of studies that we told them today, you've got to go do this study, this study, this study. But they've got 4 studies they've got to go do and come back. And we'll see what those studies may even show that they can't do what they want to do.
But just looking at it, if you're also putting in commercial, you're basically doing a planning and development.
Yes, I agree.
And so I don't think a workforce zone as an actual zone is what these guys would be looking at. Because to me, that's a particular zone just for workforce housing, nothing else. Not including commercial, not including other elements. Now, if you're doing
If you do what?
an
Overlay?
overlay,
Mhm.
then I think you could end up doing both commercial and an overlay. Or you could just create a planning and development. We used to have a PUD zone, you know.
And then we do a development agreement.
Yeah, so.
Yeah.
But obviously this gotta go back to planning.
Well, the plan, this is where,
Somebody's gotta write the zone out for
yes,
them to consider.
yes,
For planning and planning.
yes.
And
And
so the elements, just so whoever's doing this, whether it's planning board or he or somebody initially doing it, my concern would be making sure that we maintain the workforce workforce housing.
You mean maintain that it's always to be for
Or this
workers?
would be workforce housing. It's gonna be critical what constitutes workforce housing.
Yes, exactly, you have to have. a
And all
definition.
the stuff that goes with it, verification and regulation to ensure
Yeah,
compliance, those are the issues that I would be looking at with it.
oh,
Plus then density, because here you're talking about tiny homes. And I think if you're creating an overlay, you don't want to restrict yourself to say we can only have tiny homes in there. I think if you're talking about workforce housing, you may be talking about fourplex, eightplex, some type of multi-family type housing that goes in there that takes more advantage of the limited space on ground, which happens to be probably the most expensive thing that we have is the land. So you want to make sure that you utilize that at the least expense. And that may be,
the way to go instead of tiny homes.
yes, and that would be up to the developer, but you want to leave that option open when you develop that zone, so you don't. I don't think in overlay, we don't want to restrict the creativity of somebody coming in and providing you with some good workforce housing. Those would be my concerns.
Okay. And definitely keep a height limit.
Yeah, and that's, I mean, that's what the town wants, is to keep that height limit.
Yeah, we want to keep a height limit, but we definitely would love to have workforce housing and more people can live here that work in the canyon. And it's so needed. So when these two people came to me with two different projects wanting to do a similar thing, I'm like, oh, okay, this, we need this, but the only thing I could come up with was a zone.
But without that guarantee that Paul's talking about, I see a bunch of short-term.
Oh, yes, I know. Well, this is.
Or already trying to call them
Yes,
RHS.
yes. And that's what
I see.
And that's what I already talked to Heath about, because I said, I took this to Heath the other day, I took him a copy and I said, look, here's this plan. And we need a rock solid development agreement, but this can never be short-term.
Just
rentals.
looking at this, it reminds me of a modern day mobile home.
Yeah,
The only difference is it's short-term.
it's a tiny home instead of a mobile home.
And tiny homes come in on wheels, they're not built small,
Yes.
they're built
On
on
wheels,
wheels and they're
yes.
brought in.
And I'm all for affordability, but I want to make sure.
Okay.
Do you have other questions?
Well, good, what?
So you do construction? Do you do construction?
Are you in the construction industry? Do you work, you do?
So if you know about the tiny homes, don't they only come in on, wheels? Most of them?
Do they come in on wheels?
Yeah.
Yeah.
They come in like a trailer or are they built stick-built affixed?
It depends on how you handle it. I mean, Park City's done a whole bunch of workforce housing units and they tend to be more like condos,
Uh-huh.
2 or 3 stories tall, that would
What's it called? Yeah.
violate your height restrictions, but those were built just like homes. So it just depends on what the developer will come in with and what you would approve.
I have a feeling that the way he's got this drawn out, I have a feeling that he was planning on coming in on wheels.
Yeah.
Yeah, a wheel thing that you
Well,
would
you've
just
seen the
park.
development in Colorado, when you go through.
Yeah, Colorado City, yeah.
Out there, those are all tiny homes. That's what first popped into my mind, is those are all,
So you're talking prefab.
yeah, most of them that I've seen are prefab tiny homes. There are those cabins that are right by Apple Valley, but I don't think those are prefab. I think they built those.
Well, the dwellings down in Berkeley were all built. They weren't brought in.
Right.
So anyway, he just, this
Thank
is,
you.
he's come in with these plans, wanted to know what would we think, and we said, well, we don't know. The only thing about the workforce housing first is we have to do this groundwater protection study, whether or not you could even, we don't even know if it can be done anyway, because we first have to do that study.
Right.
And at this, so we had, like I said, there's 4 studies that they need to do before they come back. And so I could, the other,
That's assuming we create the zone for them.
correct. Well, if the groundwater protection study shows it can't be done, that we can't have any increased density, then they're gonna drop the whole thing about word house. That just,
But
that,
but the idea, we should be basing our decision, I mean, this is the catalyst.
yes,
But we should be basing our decision on the need for a workforce zone. Because it's a good idea versus
Mhm.
this particular project, and I think that's what you're saying.
yes, like, because two different people came to me
Yeah.
with a similar proposal. I'm like, this is so different that we probably need a zone.
So even if they don't go forward, we need to proceed in creating some type of workforce housing overlay or zone.
And if we get the groundwater protected study underway in the same time,
Yeah,
then we'll have the results and we can even be able to look and see where it can even go. If we have it, okay. Okay, so one of the things that came up, and this is related to item number 6, I'm skipping over 5 for the moment. One of the things they kept pushing on this was, when can we get water, when can we get water, how many water connections, when can we get it, when can we get it, when can we get it? And I told them when in the process they would be able to get water connections. And I'm thinking of the different projects in town right now where people have come in and paid for water connections, such as the hotel over here by Fairfield, where they paid for the water connections, yet they've done nothing. Nothing's really happening over there. I told this guy, because he kept on and on and on and on and on and on and on about the water. And I see from 2 points, 2 perspectives. One, they can't go forward if they don't have water. They've got to know they're gonna have the water. On the other hand, I told him that if we do this and a development agreement gets approved, that I would want written in the development agreement that if they did not break ground and start working on this project within some time frame that is chosen, that the water connections revert back to the town. I don't want them to be able to get access to a bunch of water connections and then sit on them and do nothing
and so,
or something. And so I told them that there would be a time limit, you have to break ground and get started for the water connections to come back to the town. And this led to the discussion when Jean and I were talking about this 2 weeks ago. This led to a discussion about all the people that are paying standby fees right now in the different subdivisions that got platted, and they're paying standby fees, and it's been a decade and nothing's happened. And so really, should we even be allowing people to get standby fees? And that's a discussion for another day, but I'm just throwing that out there because Jean and we were saying, if we're gonna tell them they have a time limit by which to start, we're gonna have to tell everybody else. If they don't,
that's two different.
why not?
One, you're talking about telling people that already have their connections, who've been paying standby fees. for-
Yeah, you can't take that away. You just,
That's right, yeah, that's what hopefully it's not what I was hearing.
Yeah.
Okay, as long as you're telling prospectively, yes,
Okay.
but not,
yeah, the whole people who've done it this time, you can't necessarily take it away from them. But I want you guys to be thinking about whether or not we want to allow standby fees for the future. Because they would say, because I estimated like 50 water connections, I told them 40 to 50 for this project was my estimation. And for the whole thing, what all is on there, and so he would be paying the standby fee for 50 connections for every month until they get started. And at some point, it's like, but I want them to know ahead of time, you can't just get 50 water connections. I feel like they might want to sell them.
I think having that discussion is good in a sense, because if you're out there, why wouldn't you just come in and start buying up connections? And then knowing that there's a limited amount of connections and those are gonna become all
More
valuable.
valuable,
And
yes.
then you end up selling those, or you buy the property and then you sell it with the property.
So Heath and I talked about that being in the development agreement too. That no short-term rentals, not ever, your water, you don't start within a certain amount of time, the development agreement's over, and we get our water connections back, and blah, blah, blah.
We
Just,
should be looking at that with everybody.
everybody going forward. Okay. So I wanted us to have that discussion. Okay, so that's 6. Oh, by the way, regarding the joining the water cooling agreement, you know, we were trying to, when we approached the Water Conservancy District, this was about us getting in before this new, getting into it before the new, water supply agreement was, before it was revised. And then we would be part of the revisions. So they have finished the revisions. It is on its way to every town's attorney for review. The attorney for the Water Conservancy District is setting a meeting with every attorney for every town, so they're sitting there face to face and going over it and reviewing. And he said that, there's a provision in there that, no town can join unless 100% of the other municipalities are in favor. And he said, right now, 3 towns, out of all the towns that are arguing on this, 3 towns are saying no. And they're pushing hard that we would not be allowed into the water supply agreement. So that's where we are right now. And so what he
That's under the new agreement?
under the new agreement, yet he started talking about this is what we have to do. And I'm thinking, well, I thought we were trying to get in, we were trying to get before this is, yet it's done and it's out for review by the attorneys for each of the towns.
But
Each
that's,
of the municipalities. I understand, but I'm telling you what Zach was saying, which was, we can't, we have to change something here, we have to change something here. And I'm like, but I thought we were trying to get in beforehand. And so why would this language prevent us from getting voted on now? But he said that right now he does not know if he was to bring this to a vote right now, to the board at the Water Conservancy District. He has no idea how they would vote to let us in, and that, he did not want to bring to the board a vote on something where he doesn't know how they're gonna vote. Similar to, don't ever ask a question at trial where you don't know the answer.
so it'd be a majority vote now.
At the present time, it's a vote by the board.
By the board.
If we go under this new
The
water
majority of
supply
the board.
agreement, under the new, yes, right now, it's a majority of the board, but he doesn't want to take it to a vote of the board because he doesn't know how they're gonna vote. So he's gonna go talk to the different members of the board. In the meantime, he told me, I need to go out and start doing a charm offensive with every one of the mayors that are out there to try to get them to say, sure, you can join and don't oppose. And, but I don't know who the 3 are that are against it. He said everybody else, their attitude was, we're all in this together. This is a whole county-wide
You
thing.
just move on.
Oh, I know exactly who one of them is. I don't know who the other 2 are.
But hopefully we can get in before the new one's
We
signed,
got 2 months.
because
It's down, they're done, they're reviewing it, and they're gonna bring it to the board. The time is limited.
I hope we get that opportunity to have the board vote on it before the new agreements in effect.
I would agree with you.
Because the minute that new agreements in effect, we're out.
And I agree with you. And so the problem is that Zach doesn't want to take it to the board until he knows how they're gonna vote. That's what he said. I don't want to take this to the board right now because I do not know how the board members are going to vote.
What was this time frame? I'm trying to find out who's gonna vote. Did he give you any?
He did not. They were having a board meeting the day, I met with him on Monday. They were having a board meeting the very next day. Because Heath and I were kind of like, you know, did we get this before them? And he was like, I'm not taking it to the board yet. I don't know how they're gonna vote. And so I need to follow up with him. I'm like, do I really need to go out and do a charm offensive with every mayor in the county? Or if the board's gonna vote, then why should I have to spend all this time going out to do this? Although, as he said, the majority, it's only 3 of the towns that are saying no. And, all the others are like, we're all in this together, but we all need to pull together, so let everybody in. And, it's just 3 that are saying no. For now, that are objecting, and some of them do sit on the board. The board is, when you walk into the Water Conservancy District, there's the pictures of all the people that are on the board, and you're like, okay. Because I thought maybe I should do a charm offensive with the board members, not the other mayors in the county, so. And I did talk to Victor Iverson, he's on the board, I talked to him, a couple of days ago about, this, and he said, oh, I didn't know that, everybody on your council is in favor of it. And I said, well, I'm not necessarily in favor of the joining the water pooling agreement. I said, but if my council wants to join the water pooling agreement, then I have a duty to go out and try to get the mayors to agree. And I said, so, I kind of need to know from you guys what I need to do here. Because if Victor was like, I didn't know all your council was in favor of this, and I'm like, as long as the majority's in favor, that's all it needs. About joining the water pooling agreement. And I was surprised when he said, I didn't think your whole council was in favor of it. I was like, oh, okay.
I wondered where you got that.
I don't, yeah, I know, because he didn't get it. I haven't, this is the first time I've ever even
We
talked
don't
to the
really
guy.
have any other options, do we? I mean, that's.
No,
that's
we're,
it. Either we
that's it, or we
that
stick with
do
this.
we
Yeah,
join?
yes, so,
Which that's gonna stop development no matter what if you stay with that.
yeah, once we
Hit
max
1,000,
out,
we're
yeah,
done.
once we're maxed out. But even if we join the water pooling agreement, it's the rest of the county, because at this meeting, they threw up these pie charts for every single municipality up there to show how many committed things they have, how many water connections they have committed to future development. And Hurricane was unreal. Their little pie chart was maybe less than a quarter. A quarter would be that much. This was like that was current. All the rest of that pie chart was committed for future development. And the whole room was just in disbelief.
Maybe these developers should be pushing us into the water district.
Well, the pooling agreement, you mean? There is that. Well, the guy, this is Rosenberg, and Rosenberg's in favor of us joining. Rosenberg's already in favor.
They should be having a direct call to that.
So anyway, I'm just telling you guys what they said, where we are. He doesn't want to take it to the board. But I have talked, maybe I should, like I said, I should talk to the board members, not so much the mayors.
Well, yeah, the workforce zone without joining the pooling agreement creates a big issue with respect to future development. So we may not have to worry about workforce zone. We're not involved in the pooling.
Well, right now, with the amount of number we have available, this is why the guy was like, how soon can I get my water connection to know I can do this?
And
Because we have enough for him to be able to do this project
And
right now.
I'm not gonna vote in favor of a workforce zoning that breaks, taking all the water connections. Be leery of doing that.
But if
Not
we don't,
knowing what the future holds for us.
okay,
It-
well, we'll know that in 2 months. In 2 months,
Yeah.
we're gonna know whether.
Yeah, this
we're
won't get,
agreeing
in
or
the
not.
workforce housing won't get done.
That's not gonna get done. by then.
Yeah, I mean, we need
So-
to start saving for our residential. So the bottom line is we've got to figure out a way to put pressure on the board, and really staff.
Because even though this water supply agreement is being agreed to by the mayors, it seems to me, and I did not ask this of Zach, and I should have, can't the board look at this revised water pooling agreement and say, we don't like this section, just like we, the town council, can take something that comes from planning commission and say, we don't like this, we're gonna change this? Can't the board take the revised water pooling agreement and say, we don't like that it's 100%, we want it to just be a majority that can vote on this? And so that's the one thing I didn't ask him, is if the board has the right to take that agreement and make some changes. Yeah. I think I'll start talking to the board members instead of the other mayors.
Yeah,
All right, with the note here, I'm gonna talk to the board members. All right, Leroy, BMX track and excessive spending. You were in the meeting with the BMX, about the BMX, I was not there. We'll come back to deputy clerk in a minute. We'll come back to item 5.
we have a meeting on the 14th with them, and I really shouldn't voice any opinions until we have a chance to talk with them. They have spent roughly $2,000 for food items, and we do not show any income on their income statements for concessions, and that's where that would be sold. So, and according to Crystal, this lady that's taking care of their accounts really doesn't know what she's doing, so I don't, based on that, I don't assume that she just doesn't know how to handle it. But until we meet with her, I don't know what to say. She does show $214 in income from concessions, but you've got nearly $2,000 in hamburgers and hot dogs and buns and ketchup, and they've never done that before. They've always bought candy and maybe some pizza, for towards the end of the line of the.
Or chips or something like that,
Yeah,
chips and things.
yeah.
So-
But, they got hamburgers and hot dogs and chips and, what do you call these, Gatorade and things like that. Yeah,
So
I did a spreadsheet on it for us to look at, I
okay,
think it's Tuesday when we meet, is there?
Wednesday?
Tuesday or Wednesday?
Wednesday, it's Wednesday. So I'm wondering if, depending on what we find out on this meeting, and I might put this on the agenda then for our 20th meeting, I'm wondering if we need to impose a budget for each event instead of them spending like this. Because these hot dogs and hamburgers, unless they're keeping them frozen,
And we don't even know if they have a permit from the county.
Well,
To
they
have-
don't have a fridge or anything up there. I have.
well, I meant they would have them in a freezer maybe at their house, and I'm assuming they're bringing a barbecue grill up there to do the hamburgers and hot dogs.
Well, they can't sell hamburgers and hot dogs without getting
You have to
a
have a food
permit.
A food handler's permit from, okay,
Yeah,
which we'll talk about at that,
which we'll talk about.
at there, okay. Okay, because it just crossed my mind that, that maybe with these particular people that are running the BMX track, we might have to set a budget.
And we don't have a contract with them, and that's probably the bad part. I've never had a contract
With
with people
anybody.
that run it.
Uh-huh.
And we should have some sort of agreement in writing, outlining what we get and what they get and what they have to do. And they brought all these things in 4 weeks worth, and they were told they're supposed to do this on a weekly basis. And it was outlined to them on how to do it, and they're not doing it.
Okay. Okay, so we'll wait and see what happens when we have this meeting on the 14th, and then I'll put it on the agenda for the 20th if we think it's
Right.
necessary. Okay. All right. Item 8. I'm talking about the 3 access to the river down here. Jimmy, Gooch, and Wilcox, that either have gates or fences that are blocking access. So, I talked with Heath about the people that are blocking access. And he said that we have a couple of options. Well, we have three options off the bat, which is move the fence or we're gonna take it down. The town, either move the fence or the town will, just move it for them. That's one option. A second option, we could have some signed agreement with them that will allow them to have the fence and gate there, but put conditions on it. Or we have the third option could be, we make them remove their gate and we, the town, can put up a gate if we feel that a gate is necessary and, then we control what happens to those three areas. And so, Jimmy, when we talked with Jared, who was allowing the tubers to use his property, coming up to his property, he said he was fine with them using his property up until August 1st, at which point he wanted to see progress with getting Jimmy to move his fence. But they're not even gonna use it through August 1st. They told me yesterday that in 3 weeks, they can't be getting out over there anyway. The water's gone down so fast already that in 3 weeks, they're not gonna be able to get out over there. So they want over here at the end of 100 South, where there's the gate, so we've got to get Wilcox to move that gate. So that, and I'm working out a deal with that property, when you go to the end of 100 South, there, half of that is town property, and the other half, as you approach the river, is part of the HOA for Rio de Sion. So I've been talking with the HOA of Rio de Sion, who would, to allow them to use that as a takeout point for the tubers for the summer. They have a place where they want a permanent takeout, and they need to talk to that property owner, whether or not this permanent, takeout point could work. And I'm gonna set up a meeting with them and this property owner and see if we can work something out. But in the meantime, they need to be able to move over there in 3 weeks and use that for the summer. And so, I've talked to the president of the homeowners association over there, and he seemed receptive. So, and you're gonna talk to one of the members of
Yeah,
the
I'll talk to Greg and another many
the board and see.
And I know the one I'm gonna talk to, probably working,
Vote no.
that's Rob.
Okay, so, although why nobody goes over there, why they would care, I don't know. No one ever goes. And,
But
such
the
as that.
HOA has some liabilities there. You know, and with him using it, it'll be under his insurance, and he'll clean it up. I bet that's got weeds on it and.
Oh, it's
has
a,
some
yes.
Fire damage and.
He was going over there and cleaning that up before Wilcox put that gate up. And I'm wondering if that's why he put that fence or gate up there, is that maybe he saw Hannah and Adam down there doing some cleaning, because they were cleaning over there. And then all of a sudden this gate went up. And so, we have to. What are your thoughts on the way to approach this, since he said we had 3 options?
I like option A, because I wouldn't want to control it, it's down the line,
No, option A was,
or not option A, the option
A
is
C.
we control it.
yes, that's not,
Because the problem that we have is what's happening right now.
yes.
We tried to control certain sections of it, now we have someone who refuses to move their fence,
Mhm.
and we have one that built a fence, a cabin
Yes, right,
fence there, and now we have someone that built a gate.
yes,
This is town access.
Yes.
not Their
And-
property.
and so, and correct, it is not their
It's
property.
town property, and
But-
if I built that on my neighbor's property, there would be heck to pay, so
Right.
it worked the same.
But when I was saying, do we want option A, B, or C, was do we want to ultimately put a gate ourselves and control it? Or do we want to just open? Because I think what the complaints have been from Jimmy is tubers, and he was blaming the tubing company when that's not right, because there's a lot of people that tube that river individually, and I've seen them. I've watched them get out of the river, and they've got nothing to do with this tubing company, with Zion Tubing. And, because they've never made a mess, they've never left trash behind, they've always been great. And, that is why there was a fence put in down here, is because, there were some people that had a party that were tubing and just a private party. And they got out and they came up that way, and they were loud and boisterous, and they trashed the area, and that's when they put the fence up. It was, and so I'm assuming that people are coming and tubing and looking on Google Earth and seeing where they can get out. And that's what has happened. And so all 3 of these are access points to the river. And, I just don't know if we want to put a gate and have a little pedestrian entrance where townspeople can go through to get down to the river, or do we just leave it wide open to the public and then we're gonna have to deal with, the mess and potential, noise?
Sorry, that's,
It's already a mess. Where?
you can hear everything down this river.
Yeah,
And I'm
when
not blaming just the tubers, if people get out and they run along, they were started up here, it's not just Jim Riggs' property.
They were running across.
The one in particular started up here,
okay,
and he was yelling obscenities all the way down the river.
uh-huh,
And there's not just my children outside, there's all kinds of kids throughout Virgin, and these guys are yelling and running down this thing.
well, I know that, Springdale stopped all the tubing businesses in Springdale because people were tubing down the river and they were just pulling off to the side and getting off and walking all over people's private property. And
Right.
so they finally just shut down all the tubing business in Springdale for that reason.
Well, and that's not the first person that has walked along this area.
Okay,
And there's been, the other night, my daughter came in and told me that there were people out in the river at 10 o'clock at night. Cause she came, they were sleeping on the tram, she came in, she said, did you hear that, Mom? We thought it was a coyote, and I went outside to listen, and that was a person. There was
There's no
a group of
coyote,
them
it's a
floating
person.
down the river in the dark, and I mean, come on, teach their own smartness, but it's
so
already a problem.
even if we were to take the gates down and make everybody remove their gates, that's not going to eliminate this problem.
But it needs to, that needs to happen anyway, based on property alone.
Okay, so are you wanting us, are you in favor of just, removing all things and leaving it wide open? Or are you in favor of making them remove it and leave the town put up a gate?
I see a pedestrian gate. You
With a
make them move,
pedestrian
they have to move, and I believe, and there is an agreement that that one's supposed to have a walking path.
Yes.
The one over here.
Yes.
So we do the same thing at each entrance, there's a walking gate that instead of, there's creative ways to do the walking gate, there's one where you can't even tell it's a walking gate. But you walk up to it and you go in a little zigzag, and it walks you right through it, but it looks like a fence across the road. But there's a zigzag, so you can't pick up a tube really easy and carry it through there, you can't pack your picnic bag down there very easy, but it's a walking path for someone to go down to the river.
As I said, I think part of the problem is people are using Google Earth to find access points to get out of the river. Because I have been down here and I've seen townspeople back in the day, I've seen people go down here with their kids and go down to the river. But they were locals, I knew who they were, I was driving by and I saw them and I was like, oh, okay,
Well,
But-
the kids here in town use it too.
yeah.
I mean,
Yeah,
they
they
go
do.
down and
They go down the
Right, and so I've got no objection to that, I'm just thinking about the people that I think are using, they're from elsewhere, coming and tubing down the river and using Google Earth to find a place to get out.
And I think we should control it, whether we leave it open or whether we put a gate in with it walking.
Okay, well,
Walking
that,
gate would limit it a little, I think, just a
so,
barrier.
so Paul, you haven't said a word.
I don't know if it's A, B, or C, because it could be, I think it's all three. One, we have right of way that we have to keep open. So there should not be any obstructions in the right of way unless we agree to it.
Mhm.
So there's A, and we have the right to then put our own gate up, so that's C when we want to. But B would also apply if a landowner would like to put up a gate, then I think there needs to be an agreement. And then in that agreement, it's a use license that they can use it, but it's revocable at will. And we can put the terms in there and how we like the gate. So I think it's any of those three, but yes, I think we have to keep that right away clear unless we agree to put up our own gate or we allow somebody else to pursue to a license or use agreement.
And that's public land, so
Yeah.
anyone can walk it. Whether they're a resident or not.
Okay, so we don't have to decide tonight if we're doing if we. Yes.
That's why the gates,
So-
the gate makes sense.
So we don't have to decide if we're gonna do A, B, or C tonight, because right now, what I have to do is get Wilcox to move his gate so that the tubers can start using that 3 weeks from now. And then we can start, we just have to get, by August first, we have to have progress with Jimmy on moving the gate. So these are not hugely crisis type things, that gives us time to decide if we want A, B, or C.
We need to incorporate all three accesses in our timeframe. If
Okay,
someone's not having to move anything.
yeah, no, I'm not doing,
So we
no,
have to keep all three of them.
Yeah, you're
correct.
We're gonna have
To
to
keep
put
it
Paul into that.
Correct.
Yeah,
Correct.
keep all three of them.
I just meant they're not all of the same,
Right.
they're not all of the same, urgency.
And I assume when you visit with them, because we want to be good neighbors
Right.
too,
Yes.
to find out exactly what the problems are and figure out a way to mitigate those problems if we can.
All right, so in the meantime, I'll be talking to Wilcox about the fact that he needs to move the gate, or I can write him a letter, or the town attorney to write him a letter. So if you wanna be a good neighbor, so I would not have the town attorney write it. That's too,
Go find out what, the history behind it and what his concerns are, and then see if we can figure out a solution.
okay.
You're going to 9 or?
9, yes, and then we'll jump back, after 9, we'll go back up to number 5. Okay, so, Tuesday, I was at a meeting with, all the county mayors, and, everybody brought their chief of police there, the sheriff was there, all the county commissioners were there, our local, our state representative, the state senator were there. There were 3 people from the state, it had to do with something called the Juvenile Criminal Reform Initiative. And we talked about what has been going on with gangs and violent crime and then there were 2 guys there that I don't know what unit they were with, their badges were things I'd never seen before, and I was gonna go ask them where they were from. I had to leave before the meeting was over, so I didn't get a chance to talk to them. Anyway, they talked about the fact that we've had this increase in growth and population in Washington County has led to an increase in gangs and violent crimes in Washington County. And there's four, this consists of 4 things. The first is outlaw motorcycle gangs. There's been an increase, 4 different motorcycle gangs are operating in Washington County. They gave us the names of the ones that are here. The second is what they're calling a hybrid gang for juveniles. And then later we get down to not a hybrid gang, but an ordinary juvenile gang. And they said what has happened is these gangs are it's all rivals over drug sales. And they sell through Telegram and Snapchat. That's how they're selling their drugs. And, but even though they're selling drugs, the real issue has become guns and the way they carry their, outright, carrying of guns. And, so there's 2 different types of motorcycle gangs. There's the one they call a 1% club, and then the motorcycle gangs that are not 1% clubs. And we talked about what a 1% meant. But anyway, we've got 2 different types of motorcycle gangs, clubs, and then there are 2 different types of juvenile gangs. And they said the reason that we haven't seen a whole lot of this in the news is that the way they have been working, to keep control of the motorcycle gangs and the juvenile gangs. However, they said with the increased growth in population in the county, it's getting worse. And so what they want to do is they want to create a joint task force to deal with this. And they're asking every community to contribute a person from their police department to be a member of this gang task force. And so I was sitting there in the meeting going, what can we do about this? And then after the meeting was over, as I was driving back, Nanette called me from Hurricane, and she is proposing that, the small towns, this would be Springdale, Rockville, Virgin, Laverton, Toberville, Leeds, that all of us that do not have a police department where we have somebody that they could afford to be a part of it. I mean, Laverton only has what, 2 people on their police department, or 3 or something like that. They don't have anybody who can go. And so what Nanette proposed is that we all contribute some money to hire a full-time person who can be our contribution to this joint task force. And I thought that was a reasonable solution, because I could not figure out what to do, how we could contribute. And we've had gang symbols painted on the, inside the bathrooms at the park, and we've had them painted over. So somebody around here is, I guess, in a gang. Anyway, she was asking if we could contribute 5,000 toward, she said that she knows that the cost in Hurricane, every time they hire a new member of the police force, that's $150,000 on their budget for a new person. That includes the salary and all the other stuff that goes along with a police officer, the car, the vehicle, all this stuff. And so she said it cost them $150,000. So she said Hurricane would contribute the bulk of the money. And she was asking if every other community could contribute 5,000, and since we're all doing our budget right now, that this was a perfect time for everybody to be able to get this in their budget. So I said, we're having our town council, we're having a work meeting tonight. I could throw it out there for you guys if we want to contribute $5,000 toward hiring a permanent person on this joint task force that would be the contribution from all of the smaller towns that cannot send a person to be part of it.
I would assume that that would be an annual thing for.
I would assume
Or
so.
semi. So that task force, I assume, is gonna take 3, 4, 5 years to.
Yeah, and
complete their
they're,
job, so.
they have, right now, you know, the main people that we're talking with from St. George. And, it was all St. George detectives that were standing up and saying what their experience was. And then there were people from this, juvenile criminal, reform initiative from the state level that came down and were talking about, how bad things are on the Wasatch Front. And, it's spreading down here, and the one guy said, you know, he said in 1985, he was on something up there in Wasatch Front where they said, we need to get a handle on this. And he said, that was 1985, now we're at 2023, and we're still saying, we need to get a handle on this. And he said, but we have learned in the meantime what works. And he said, what they've been doing down here in Washington County has actually been working pretty well, but they need a bigger task force. And they don't have the manpower. And so, although the one person did stand up and say, well, you know, the county could pay the sheriff's office some more money, that they could hire some people. I think you would like that one, Crystal. Yes, Paul.
I'm still unclear what this person would do.
He would be a member of this joint task force. He would be a full-time member of this task force.
And so it's a gang task force.
Yes, the gangs, yes, motorcycle and juvenile gangs.
And he'd be an employee of who?
Nanette and I did not get to that discussion.
Sounds like Hurricane, if they're putting the most.
If they're putting the most, it might be Hurricane's
But Irving has their own drug task force, and Washington County has their own drug task force.
Yeah,
So
also
St. George.
too.
Okay, but they're asking for a joint task force.
They all work together and they all do their trainings together, so.
Well, then you should have come to my meeting with me and you should have stood up and asked questions, because I didn't ask, I don't know all that about these other task forces, but their point is their task for what they have right now is working pretty well, but it is increasing and it is getting out of their ability to handle it.
So they
Right,
need
so
more
it's hurricane,
bodies.
What?
They need more bodies.
They need more
which
bodies.
is a certain, you have to be certified. So Hurricane would need more money to hire somebody to get on their drug count.
I did not take this at all as this was going to be somebody on St. George's task force, or this was going to be on Hurricane's task force. I can follow up and find out, but what in the meantime, what we need to know is if we're going to put $5,000 in our budget, which we're meeting on July 20th to vote on, June 20th to vote on. Do we want to have, still, somewhere in there under law enforcement, add another 5,000, because right now we have 15,000 for paying the sheriff, of which we've only paid $360. Why the rest of 15,000 we apparently have been billed for?
That's what the
Even,
contract was.
the contract was for 15,000, they have not sent us a bill. I'm like, are we gonna pay the 15,000 or what? And so, and it's a year.
Bill, and still paid it, you just maybe didn't put it in the right.
He must not put it in the right account, 'cause it shows that we've got 15,000 budgeted, 360's been spent. And it's like, so I assume that the county has not been sending us
They sent it
bills
quarterly, but he has not put it in the right
the right spot.
spot. I'm
Okay.
assuming.
All right. I've seen that on several things, so. So anyway, we will be budgeting 15,000 for, law enforcement, the question is, do we make it 20? And if so, then we have to get Sil to tell him tomorrow to, make this change to the budget, because we're gonna post it on Monday for the public hearing.
He's gotta make one change already.
So we would add this if we were gonna increase the law enforcement thing to 20, from 15 to 20.
Another thing we need to remember about a budget is a guideline.
Right, it doesn't mean we're going.
You know, and you go over and under in every item, and some items you hit it. So if you spend $20,000 rather than 15, if we don't have enough information to make a decision,
We
it's not
just
gonna
don't
make a
spend-
big deal in
Right.
our budget, because we have to amend it every year anyway.
So we could put the 5,000 in the budget, we can increase law enforcement from 15 to 20, and we've got the money in the budget, but in the meantime, we can get questions, answers to your questions before we ever distribute any $5,000.
I was gonna say, I would want to see an interlocal agreement where.
Oh, that will be done.
Yeah, so.
That's
they'll
what we-
understand
We talked,
what the money's gonna be used for, what,
we talked about it.
obligations are gonna be of the individual to each town. And.
Well, I tell you what, because Nanette said we would do an interlocal agreement, that was her plan. I will make sure you're the person.
Well, I mean, in this town, we've done it two ways, you either budget for it, or you amend the budget. I'm in favor of somebody for the task force,
Mhm.
provided the body makes sense to the community, and we understand what that person's gonna do. Just throwing money into a pot for another body without knowing how it's gonna benefit us in this community. I wanna make sure we understand what that benefit is before we throw that pot in. So if we put it in the budget. I
Doesn't
want
mean
to-
it's, yeah, it doesn't mean it's gonna get
It's not
spent.
going to them until we approve the.
Exactly. Exactly. So I just want to make sure that, we can have, Leroy contact Sil and tell him to fix that. You said you already talked about the one thing you found. Okay,
I can send an email and get tomorrow morning.
okay, and tell him to just add 5,000.
Add 5,000.
Okay, into the law.
But then that's idea is a good idea. I mean, it makes sense because small communities, we can't afford our own person.
Right, because I was sitting there during the meeting thinking, what can we do? How are we gonna contribute to this? And then when she called me, I hadn't been gone 30 minutes from the meeting when she called, and I was like, of course, why didn't I come up with that?
But then there becomes, after you do that, then there becomes an issue of control. And that's what I'm concerned about.
Yeah.
I've seen it in other boards
We're gonna have such a small percent what that guy.
We're not gonna have any,
We won't have much
we
control.
won't have any control, but we wanna be able to at least say, come here, we got this problem. We need to talk to you and tell us how we're gonna solve this problem here. And this kind of thing. We're gonna have very little control. I just don't want us to be putting 5,000 in every year and not seeing or understanding where that's going.
Yeah.
I think,
Okay.
I think Leroy, you and I are on that same.
Yeah.
Yes, okay, so now we'll go back to number 5, because since that has to do with the budget also. Number 5 was about the deputy clerk, and, we talked about this position. I personally do not want to call this position that I want to hire, a deputy clerk. Jean was thinking we should call this position a deputy clerk, but the job duties that we have in mind for this person are not deputy clerk job duties. So, Crystal had some input about a deputy clerk. I figured I would ask Misty, since you've been a deputy clerk, what your feelings are on, I'll explain what this job duty, the job duties of this person. And then you guys can tell me what you think about calling it a deputy clerk, or if we should call it something different. But this, this person would essentially work with, the zoning administrator and planning and zoning on, all the different projects, such as this one where we just looked at this plan, and we have some software we're using now to keep track of all the, applications for any kind of development. And, I've been learning how to use the software, and the other day I was doing something, I said, I just do not have time for this, I don't have time. We have got to have somebody else to do this, and Crystal is spending a lot of her time answering questions on things that all have to do with development. And so my idea is this person is going to handle, if we had a community development department, this person would be working in that department. And it's not technically a deputy clerk, they're gonna be working, doing nothing but working on community development. And so I was thinking of calling this, community development assistant, something like that. Jean felt like we should call it deputy clerk / community development assistant. Anyway, we want to put money in the budget to hire a person that will handle all of the stuff, and so, because they'd be handling conditional use permit applications, they'd be working with planning and zoning and setting these DRC meetings, attending the DRC meeting, creating the agendas for these development review committees, taking minutes of the meetings, and, these development review committee meetings. So we passed these 2 ordinances that create this new process, but it makes more work. And we need someone who's going to be working with that. So it's a part-time job, not full-time. And so so Crystal was telling me that in her mind, a deputy clerk has, certain trainings that they have to do. And I wonder, so I figured I'd ask you, Misty, having been the deputy clerk, what does it mean to you if we call someone a deputy clerk?
Well, it's her second hand person. I mean, when you guys hired me as a receptionist originally, that's what the other clerks were telling us, is that I'm actually the deputy clerk.
That you were not really a
That I was
receptionist,
a
you were the deputy
receptionist,
clerk.
because it's gonna be Crystal's backup.
Uh-huh.
It's gonna be the person that can handle things when Crystal's gone.
Mhm.
So if you're gonna make it a deputy clerk, it's gotta entail more duties than that.
Okay,
Cause she would be the one that could sign in place of Crystal if she had to, and was the one that would be when Crystal's on vacation, she'd be running the show.
and that's one of the things that Paul had said was his issue, was that we need someone who would be able to do that.
Right, and that's why a deputy clerk is, if you check with most towns and cities, they have a deputy.
Yeah, I
To
understand that.
step in, and that's why they have it. Duties aside, I mean, a lot of times they'll say things like, I think Monica remembers, she said, give your deputy clerk your business licenses, give your deputy clerk
Right,
certain things.
Yeah.
And so she,
but you see, but this position, I don't want them to do the business licenses.
Right, and she
I
doesn't
want
have
them
to,
to
but
do,
you're-
it's purely,
but this is still
Development.
kind of, it's a development as part of what Crystal's doing already.
She wants them doing primarily more just development stuff.
Right.
When it
Yes.
comes to only development and development only.
So what happens when you're.
but so
Like,
so
so
Still nothing,
well,
Nothing
hold
will
on.
happen, it would just have to be on hold, because she couldn't do it.
right,
Going back to the job duties, I know that our clerk has been doing that, but if you go and look at their job duty, if you look at their job description, it's not in their job.
No, and
description.
I agree, I'm not disagreeing with, I'm not
And-
disagreeing with that, but I'm talking about the times when she needs her to be the
Yes,
deputy clerk.
Yes, and I
They can step
understand
in
that.
and we can have a meeting with the deputy clerk,
Mhm,
with the deputy clerk instead of a clerk, we don't need.
I
The clerk
understand,
can't be here, the deputy can, so it frees her up for different meetings, we split it, planning and zoning versus town council. It was just that way that we were able to give each other a break and it gave them the things.
Okay.
The time, and that it also gave them the opportunity to, when Crystal goes on breaks, she has someone that can step in and take care of it.
my plan was to go to SUU, to the MPA department, and see if they have anyone in the MPA program from Washington County who might be possibly looking for a part-time job. And I was assuming that, this person, this would give them some experience, the municipal experience under their belt, and that ultimately they could, stay on in, they could ultimately be trained for other stuff here in town. It might turn into full-time 3 years from now, let's say. Certainly not right now,
Right.
but who knows what could happen in the future. And so,
In my opinion, we need the deputy clerk more than we need something like that. That's just my personal opinion. Crystal, how do you feel? Do you feel like you need a deputy clerk, someone who can step in
I
and
think
do the
so.
meeting, part of our duties?
I feel like I handled this office pretty well, to be honest with you. I feel like, and everybody knows, and even Jean has sat at my desk and said, Crystal, you know, you don't have to work 24/7 constantly, I do not require that of you, but I said, I know, I just do it. And that's fine, but, and I'm not complaining about it. But it would be nice where these development stuff where she's talking, where Jean, because Jean is working with the zoning stuff, and I pick up a lot of Jean's work.
mhm,
You guys know this, you know this, you know this, we all know this. I do a lot of the zoning stuff that Jean should be doing zoning stuff. And that would be nice, and that takes a lot of my time away. So if that took off some time, and they kind of could take over just planning and zoning, so where it's just development stuff, they don't need to be a deputy clerk, they need to be a development person,
All right. But
if that
it's-
makes sense.
Yeah.
but I do not see why this person could not, be able to fill in when Crystal is gone. Why they couldn't have the skill set to be able to, fill in when Crystal's gone.
I
So,
mean, yeah, I'm sure I would still work with this person on a
Right.
not an everyday basis, but obviously I'm not gonna be blindsided and not know what goes on. I talk to the public works guys every day.
Right.
I know exactly what they're doing all the time.
Well, it's not even that, but
So what's the hang up with having a deputy clerk?
The
That
hang-
does also zoning.
because you can assign the duties as you see fit, I think.
But what I'm saying was that having as a deputy clerk, is you're gonna make the, you know this, Missy, they're gonna have to go to certain trainings, just like I do, they're gonna have to be doing different things. Their title isn't quite there. When it
No,
comes to
but-
more development.
Yeah,
But can they answer a phone call and take an email? Well, if they do development stuff, they can answer a phone call and take an email and fill in for me why I'm not. That's not hard. to
that
do.
they can do.
And 99% of the time, I answer the phone calls and he emails my copy anyway, so.
I was just concerned that a deputy clerk, as they said, they're gonna be going to training and learning, these skills that are nothing I want this person to, that's not what I have planned for this person. So if we call it a deputy clerk / community development assistant, that's fine. I just was concerned that I didn't want this person to suddenly have this,
Expectation.
yes, some kind of expectation, not from the townspeople, but from like the state.
Right.
That is like, wait, that's not what this person's supposed to be doing, that's not what we hired them.
But you'll get it from the townspeople too, well, they're the deputy clerk, why are you not having them do this? And they're
Exactly.
gonna come in and say, well, they're the deputy clerk.
Yeah, and it's like, but
And you're
I want them
going to that
focused on this
You
one
said
thing.
P and Z, are you wanting them to come and write the meeting?
Well, if they're gonna do development, I mean, why not?
Don't they have to be a clerk to run a meeting though?
No,
So what,
not P and Z, but town council, I'm not saying town council, I have to be town.
so educate me on the training, because you would send, and you wouldn't send both Crystal and the deputy clerk at the same time to the same training,
We went the same
but you don't have to, you could have.
No,
one
but
go-
Monica and Crystal, Monica and Misty used to be gone, we would shut the office, and they both go to training.
It would just be for that week, but we.
Sure, the clerk's training's like, what is it? Office stuff, it's business licensing and what not to do when you're in the office,
How to protect CYA.
how to, yeah, like, it's not like this development's coming in and your zoning administrator's doing like that, it's not that stuff.
Right, because
Our trainings are not that, our trainings are, you law for elections
and this person is not gonna be doing anything about elections.
Clerks in all encompassing cities don't have to worry about that, but clerks in our type of town, they run everything.
Yeah.
They're not just one person. That's why I'm saying the deputy clerk is actually kind of key for us, is because the deputy clerk can help with all of those duties. It's just,
Right,
I don't know, Monica, did you see it as a benefit? I mean, you have had 3 deputy clerks. You felt like they were a benefit. It is something that's a benefit.
and I understand that, but what's happened is we've had so much development that Crystal was spending more time on development issues
So you
than
give
other
them
stuff,
that.
and that's why I want this
You
person
give
to
them
handle
that.
that. But I wanted, okay,
Council, and I think Misty told me that part of the issue, towns all over the state and the country have clerks. And they're not, called clerks, but they're not,
they're not what?
they're clerks, called clerks, but they're not the deputy clerk of the town.
Correct.
So what
Which
do
is
you call the
different.
development?
Well, then
clerk?
you've got billing clerks, you've
Yeah.
got this clerk, you've got that clerk, yes.
But at some point in the future, we are gonna need a deputy. clerk.
I agree,
Yeah. So
I
we just,
disagree with that.
And it is,
I like Crystal's suggestion, why don't you
Well,
call it?
there's a development clerk.
well, that's fine. What you just said, I heard you. I don't know.
And then it's got the clerk in there, that like, okay.
Yeah, and she could get
There's legal.
cross training, but she doesn't have to meet all the requirements of state.
Okay, that's what I was concerned about. I didn't want this person to have to meet requirements and go to trainings for things that they weren't gonna be doing.
Well, but this is what Monica, this is what I was getting at, but Monica said it a lot better.
What?
Say it out.
Just that if you have a development clerk, there are certain things that if Crystal's gone, this person can't fill in for her.
Yes,
A deputy clerk.
can, and I understand that.
And that doesn't mean that the deputy clerk, you know, we kind of divided things up. And you don't have to do it that way. She had, you know, water bills and she had the meetings. Well, they don't have to have that description. It can be development. And yet she would still be trained enough to take water payments, that type of thing, if Crystal's out of the office.
Okay.
It's, and
Okay.
working in an office setting, cross-training
Yes.
is a big thing, and being able to call them a deputy clerk gives them the legal ability to do that by giving them the training. But I don't know, maybe we need to research the deputy clerk, maybe they don't
But you
know.
guys, I don't think you understand. I don't think you guys really understand. Jean is, that's not her focus. So she takes, you want her to take a water payment one time during the year?
No,
No?
well, only if you're gone, if, I picture if this is only a part-time job. So this person is not gonna be in the office 40 hours a week like Crystal is. And I picture that when this person is in the office, they're going to be dealing with things like this, they're gonna be putting stuff in the software program. They're gonna be answering the phone calls that have to do with development and the people asking all these questions that are interrupting the bulk of Crystal's day. I mean, just since all this development that has happened, even since you've been gone with being deputy clerk, that's the bulk of the work, it seems, that it's taking over. And we need someone who focuses on the development side of things. And I can tell you from, Gene and I were talking about some training he went to as zoning administrator. And it's the kind of training I would want this person to go to. That has to do with zoning administrator, duties and, development and what issues that they need to be looking at. You know, the curbs and gutters and what kind of roads and what about the water and what about this and what about that. And that's what I picture this person getting trained to do. Not, learning how to do a water bill.
It's just so like in Ivans, Sharon, my daughter's the deputy clerk. She has nothing to do with the front office, she has nothing to do with town council. She is development, she is planning and zoning. She does zoning and developing, and that's it.
But she goes to these training sessions?
She does go to the training sessions, but part of her point is she's young enough that she wants to work, you know, every time you get a new certificate, you're supposed to get it.
If you're supposed to get a raise with them,
A raise and, you know, your title, they add to your title, all of that.
But I was just gonna ask if they're not really required to do it, are they?
I don't think, they're not required to do all of what the clerks are required to do. But for instance, she has had to deal with all of the candidacy paperwork this week, because their town clerk is out of town. Their city clerk is out of town, so the deputy clerk had to fill in and do all of the election stuff. She couldn't do that if she didn't have the title of deputy clerk.
Okay.
And yet, she doesn't do any of the office stuff. She does, like you want your person to do, she does development. It's a rare thing that she fills in and does anything in the office or like elections. But there, 95% of her job is development.
Okay.
But that's also a city, we're a town.
Yes.
Just like Hurricane has a building and a development department and a water department that just takes water bills. And I mean, do you know what I mean? They have, Ivans is the same way. They have so many different departments in there as well. We don't have that.
We're not required to have one, and you do not want a deputy clerk.
Well, I feel that if we can call this person a deputy clerk, or we can call them a development clerk. Deputy clerk / development, or development clerk. I just feel that once Crystal is not having to deal with so much of the zoning administrator stuff that has been taking so much of her time, that some of the other stuff that she may feel that I don't need a deputy clerk. I don't know. I have no idea what will happen after this person's doing that. But if we need to hire the person as a deputy clerk, so for other reasons, then we'll give it that job title. I just needed to know, I wanna hire this person, I just don't know what job title to call it.
If you do development clerk and then you find out that's not what it is,
We can always change it.
Job.
Stay
Okay.
And give
development clerk and
give responsibility.
I did understand that you do have to be a clerk to run any of the the planning, zoning, and council meetings. I thought that was the rule. It's my memory, so if.
and that's what I was thinking, but that's something we can check.
We have
so
to check.
Darcy then.
She ran, but there was a clerk here with her, not all the time. And I don't know, that's why there might be.
Well, but we have time because I can't imagine this person's gonna get hired before like October.
Well, yeah,
So-
I kind of building.
You can rebuild it, build it to these, even if we just make a place for it and call it something else.
Yeah,
My interest, and I've already told the mayor this, my interest is I would be in favor of it only if we could have Fridays covered.
which means this person would have to do clerk duties on Friday.
Well, you would do,
Minimal clerk duties, I mean, they don't have,
They don't
except
have
for
to
the water
do-
payment, you don't have to be a clerk.
yeah, they can do all of
That's
this.
true.
Clerk duties are things that are legal, like big things, signing or elections.
But you might as well make them a clerk and train them as a deputy clerk then. I think we need coverage on Fridays
And
and
I don't mind there, I mean, I've been in the office on Friday and I've seen what people come walking in the door on Fridays, and, sometimes it's somebody who wants to get a construction meter. Sometimes it's somebody who wants to drop off and get a building permit, or it's somebody who wants to, you know, we have to say, Crystal's not here, I'm sorry, come back on Monday. And why they didn't know that the office was closed on Friday, I don't know. But,
I've never been to that on Fridays, though.
Well, FYI, I just got an email, I'll have to find it, I'll forward it to you. Most of the towns and cities are now going to a 4-day work week in the state of Utah.
Government be Monday, through Thursday, and closing on Friday.
410s have been,
Yep,
I
still way to go.
coverage on Fridays.
Monday through Thursday.
See, I'm not a believer.
They're actually, I think they're trying to pass it as a state law.
410 is all right if you cover Friday and Monday with the 410s, but I think we're in the service business of our citizens, and I think we should have coverage on Friday. It should, just my philosophy, try to serve people and do have that service available, then go for it.
Okay.
As the deputy clerk, I think we should at least have some coverage on Fridays.
I think we need to move on. We can stay on this all day.
Let's disagree. I was just at the time going, okay.
it's gonna be something.
We have put it in the budget, so it's there.
Yeah, we already put it in.
Yeah.
Well, in order for me to vote for the budget, I wanna know that coverage for Fridays is possible.
Okay,
Well, it's only a part-time job.
it's only a part-time.
So it's a possibility you could work.
I mean,
Or him on Friday.
if we put this person,
On Fridays,
if we put-
would work on Mondays.
okay, if we put this person on Friday, that's a big chunk of their
Cause they
work
get,
week.
what, 32 hours or 30 hours?
Yeah,
You just give them Monday off.
That is, Jaylee was kind of the same as Paul. I'll vote for it if we open the office on Fridays, which of course we didn't really want to do. But it was kind of determined that we would open it from 9 to noon, shortened day
on Fridays.
on Friday. But, so that's an option if you feel you have to have a Friday employee.
But you've got a point, they can have Mondays off,
They can have Mondays.
Mondays off, so that can work. Okay,
Well, I only get Fridays with my husband every so often, and I'm sorry. You guys don't have me enough
okay, so,
and nights.
all right, so we're gonna move on as Leroy suggested. And we will figure out what we're gonna do about the Friday thing by the 20th so that Paul can vote.
Well, he might get outvoted.
I could say, he might get outvoted, that's true.
Probably would get a hold of them.
I would make sure we got outvoted, because that budget has to keep it.
Yes, that was just gonna be voted on.
Right.
So,
All right,
They shut everything down.
okay, so the next thing is this lighting ordinance, the lighting ordinance, we had it on the agenda. Before, and it did not get voted on because we ran out of time. And so this is going to be on the agenda this next meeting.
You wanna have John say it?
Yeah, I guess we'll have Sean tell us why we're doing this.
In a nutshell.
Very short and to the point.
This is all about outdoor lighting.
Yes. This particular section is not changing any current thing in our lighting ordinance, it's just adding some general concepts or, not even standards at this point, it's just the general ideas of the direction we want to go with a newer lighting ordinance. Currently, we only cover, the option of glare as a problem. This would have 7 other things that we would be able to write standards for. And those are listed there under those first 5 things. But these are not the standards. Those will come later in the ordinance down below as we produce those and recommend them to the council.
Sean, what was the vote at the planning commission on this? Do you recall? What was
The vote, was it unanimous at the planning commission?
I can't remember if Kent said yes. No, actually he did. But then we met afterwards, and he's like, I don't understand what I voted on. So we had about a 3-hour meeting and figured that out.
it? So talk to Trent.
So it's recommended by.
Yeah,
I'm not sure I like the maximum height of 25
I was
feet.
just looking, our accessory buildings are set at 20.
Yeah, this is a
And our
very tall
houses
sign.
though are set at 25, so I would rather go with the accessory building height.
the standard street light is 25,
That's the
But-
street light.
Yeah, that's a street light.
And we're
And
changing
so I don't like the idea of having some lights outside when it's at
those. I'm
25 feet.
found more,
What?
it's not a fan of higher.
I'm just thinking how, for example,
Let me explain it again.
Okay.
None of this is the standards. These are just going to be the general guidelines. That's why the word guidelines in there. These are just guidelines, but the actual outdoor regulations for commercial, for recreation, for residential, those will be written with standards.
in those zones,
In those particular sections will relate to each zone or whatever section we're talking about. But these are just the guidelines to start us out. So we can start looking at shielding, glare, what are the other things listed there?
filtering,
Filtering, because right now, all we do is worry about glare.
okay. The other thing that I put down that I circled here that I wasn't sure I agree with is the 11 PM time to turn out the lights. I'm more in favor of 10,
That seems fair.
because 11 seems
Right
a
next
little
to
late for,
It's already in our ordinance at that.
at 10, because this says 11.
There's one that says 10:30, there's one part that says 11, and so I just took the latest one
Okay,
and put it in the general guidelines. But we have one that says 11 o'clock unless it's a pre-scheduled event that's going to be longer than that.
So Sean, so I take it that these guidelines you want in place because they provide more direction than we currently provide in the ordinance, and planning and zoning are gonna come back with guidelines. Not guidelines, but standards.
Actual standards and even restrictions.
And that's why you don't wanna wait for this to be put in with that, you want it in until you get the placeholder, till you get the standards in.
Yes, and this will not change any of the requirements that are already listed in our current ordinance.
When would we expect to see the standards coming back?
I'm asking that question.
This has been 3 years trying to just get it on an agenda and get it passed. So we would hope that it would move forward faster now, that we have the guidelines. If you guys don't like the guidelines, then we will just table it. And we're okay.
So
So it's.
can I ask a question, just, and I'm not being flippant, and I'm not being rude, so please don't take it that way. Why is it so, why do we have to be so complicated? Can't we make it pretty basic? I'm really not trying to be rude, I'm not.
So right now, it's down in the children. We can leave it just like that, and it's not gonna bother me one bit, but if we wanna protect the night sky, we wanna have options for people to still have light, still protect safety and other things like that, without compromising the ability to have people actually light it. Because I can put a porch light out here right now that is exempted in our ordinance. And, it could shine right over here and it's exempted. So we want to be able to control that type of stuff. We can't do it under the current ordinance. So it's not complicating, it's just giving us more options.
Okay, thank you.
All right, so we've got some explanation. This is gonna go on the agenda for the 20th. For us to, vote on. You guys have any other questions for Sean about the lighting ordinance?
I'm going with solid, when it's a board, it's probably a question.
Yeah, we might have more by the time the meeting comes up.
Well, but yeah, or when we start adding to it and we start looking at the full ordinance.
Yeah. Okay.
So there's gonna be a lot of question there, because it's.
So when we did a 2 or 3 months ago, we reviewed some of these definitions. And I think we did L through M, or we either just did L or we did L through M. And I had the notes written and it's in my filing cabinet, in my office up there inside, that I just did not want to go up there and go in and try to find documents today. So I know I have a file with where we made, what changes we made in the L's. I just cannot remember if we included M, if we did L and M. I wondered if we need to start with. So I want to skip what we've already done. And I know we did the L, I just don't know if we did M. Crystal, would you be able to pull up the agenda from, say, March? For the work meeting, a work meeting agenda for March. I don't think we talked about it in April. I know we didn't talk about it in April. But we could check April, but I really don't think we talked about the definitions in April. I think it
You
was
did L and M in March.
L and M, okay.
L and M.
Okay. And we're gonna go back, and look at the stuff on M later on, not tonight, but a different meeting. We're gonna go back and look at the M's for the definitions of manufactured home, mobile homes, because of something that came up this week that had to do with mobile homes, so I want to be able to go back and look at those. I don't want to go into it today. We'll have a work meeting when we have our town council meeting on the 20th. I plan to have a closed meeting afterwards, because I want to talk about, what happened with regard to a mobile home, and I don't want to do it in an open meeting. So I'm gonna do it in a closed meeting, and then after that, we'll go back and look at these. So we can go ahead and look at, well, NOP. We can get through R today, surely. Surely we can get through those. I know we're right at 8 o'clock, which is when I want the meeting to end, but we just have this one page, so we should be this 3/4 of this one page of page 4. We should be able to do that, don't you guys think? Okay. So if we start off with non-compliant structures, so we're on page 4, starting with the ends, non-compliant structure. A building or other artificial structure which complied with a zoning ordinance when it was built, but which would no longer comply due to ordinance changes. So why do you want to take off the thing that gives an example? That says, a structure can be non-compliant due to such things as setbacks or height requirements. So that's just giving an example. Why do you want to take that out?
It's in the ordinance.
You want to take it out?
Let's take that definition, but it's already in the ordinance. It's-
Oh, in the ordinance where we're talking about non-compliant structures, that section, okay. All right. Oh, thank you. I suddenly realized, well, as soon as you did that, I was like, oh, it has been kind of dark.
Yeah, no, I couldn't read it. It's all eyes couldn't focus.
Okay, open space. I know you're removing it because the, oh, there's a new definition, land that is protected. I still think the definition for open space should include these types of uses. Because the open space zone was deleted from our code. So we no longer have an open space zone in town, but we do have some places in town right now that were zoned open space. And so they stay zoned open space even though the zone's been removed from the code. I personally feel like these types of uses should stay. For examples of what is public use or enjoyment. I would have no disagreement saying land that is protected by legislation from private development for public use or enjoyment, such as parks, courts, playgrounds, blah, 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 blah. But what do you guys think?
Is it spelled out anywhere else?
Well, it was when we had the zone,
But it's not spelled out.
but now the zone is gone, it's not spelled out anywhere what open space means, other than this is the only place. And I know that only because when I was looking at, zoning for, parks in town, what the parks were zoned, that's when I realized the open space zone has been deleted from the code.
I don't think it hurts. Leave the other part in, but this is such as.
But it just clarifies it if you put such as.
Yeah.
Yeah, such
that
as,
makes it-
such as, and then those examples.
What was the purpose of the change?
To take the zone out, you mean, Sean?
Sean, yeah, I mean, the new language, because it seems like,
An open space.
yeah, it seems like you're adding requirements that one is protected by legislation, and it's gotta be to protect it from private development, which isn't always true. I mean, what was the logic behind that particular language?
Paste on Google.
Because I think of open space as more of what the current definition is. Or land that is
But
designated by the town council in ordinance for, I mean,
Are you heard of the word legislation?
land that is protected by legislation.
yeah, that implies that we have to pass some kind of
Well, it
legislation.
could be state or town council, or it would have to do that. And it's protected from private development, not necessarily, you're not protecting it from, you could be. But you're also designating it for public use and enjoyment. I'm just trying to reconcile the different terms in there. So I think what you're saying is it's undevelopable. You can't develop it because it's open space. Is that what you're trying to say, Sean? Don't know.
It doesn't matter, that's exactly what it is in Google.
So when you say Google, you just Googled it and that's what came up with?
That was a general definition from many municipalities and
Okay.
stuff.
Okay, oh, I see what you did, you Google various definitions, open spaces, you picked one that everybody could agree on that we liked.
You can make it anything you want.
Mayor,
What do you want to do? Just keep it the way it is right now? Leave the definition?
I'm not sure. I think I see what they're trying to do. But if we go with theirs, I like your addition to it. Or-
Such as one.
Yeah,
But yeah, I'm worried about the private development because you can, I believe, do private development on. Oh, I think I see what you mean. If you make it private development, then it's not available for the public, it's only for a private company where open space, the whole point is for it to be for public use.
but you can have open space requirements on private development.
Such as, oh, yes.
I'm just brainstorming.
Such as when we say open space, subdivision or whatever.
So I'm just trying to reconcile the terms, because you could create an area that's required open space for that particular development.
We have a lot of
Yeah,
open
yes, you know
space.
what?
That could be limited to that.
I think, given the fact that, because this says, if you look at our definition as it stands right now, space reserved in parks, sports, playgrounds, golf courses, and other similar open areas, comma, and those areas reserved to meet the density requirements of development, that needs to stay in there, because we require open space of subdivisions and, some of the developments, like for the hotel, they had to have open space in order to get the density. And so I think that needs to stay in there. Because of that, so I think maybe we should leave the definition the way it is.
We have open spaces in a lot of references in our ordinance, like I just typed in open space just to see like, it's referred to in different ways, there's open space areas, there's also the open space that you're talking about with development. So the definition, I think it needs to stay
Stay
at
as
that
it is.
little bit, because
Or it just
we're
stays as
defining
it
it
is.
different, yeah, if you left it as it is, it hits all the
All the-
defining characteristics of why we use it.
Okay,
But that's just, if you type it in, it's
Uh-huh.
hit in 23 different places.
Okay.
It talks about different types of open space in our ordinance and defined in different ways in the ordinance.
okay. Okay, are you in agreement with that, Leroy?
Yeah.
Okay. All right, so this next one, zoning ordinance, it just looks like the only thing they did is they is Sean capitalized town council. That's the only change. I don't think any of us are gonna disagree with that.
No.
Okay. Site plan, a plan containing the information for any development of land required by Hulu chapter 2.18. Isn't that? What's 2.18?
That's what I'm Site plans required, a detailed site plan with a scale on the sheet.
But what's
Size.
what's chapter 2?
That's 2.18.
What's the whole chapter, what's the title of the whole chapter?
Chapter 2 is general provisions.
Yeah, that's where the definitions are. definitions are in chapter 2.
This is the 2.18
That has to
site
be
plan is required.
12 established. Okay.
So the general provisions and definitions of, let's see, the purpose, short title, definitions of the rooms. No, it designate exact enacted purpose for the promoting of the healthy pension plan.
I wonder,
The
okay,
definitions are 2.12 of that section.
yes, okay.
And the 2.18 is the site plan section of. Oh, it's just a section of
Okay,
site plan required.
okay, so it just says a plan containing the information for any development of land required by Hulu, chapter 2.18.
Which is site plan requirements.
Yeah, so I don't see any problem with that definition.
Because 2.20 is inspection. Has nothing to do with it, it's just putting it in the right place.
And I have wondered, this next one, the definition of planning and zoning commission. I've always wondered why we call it planning and zoning. Every place else calls it planning. It's the planning commission. Nobody calls it planning and zoning but us. And, I talk to other towns, and I say planning and zoning commission, they're like, what? Everybody calls it planning commission except Virgin.
And
Zoning
that's what
overlay.
I've been told, this is virgin.
Yeah, because I'm like, why can't we just call it the planning commission? Everybody else, so I do, when I'm doing stuff, I'll just call it the planning commission, because I'm like, I don't even know why we call it planning and zoning. Nobody else does in the state.
Big undertaking if we change it.
There are other places that do throughout the country, so but it's
Okay,
whatever we want to call it.
When we change half of Hulu.
that's true. But the definition is fine. I see, no problem with
I
that.
like that it says appointed. It
Yeah,
pointed out exactly what it is.
Good change.
yeah. Okay, so,
Recreational area.
I know this says it's used as a temporary dwelling. But-
To that,
I'm sorry?
you object to that?
Well, I'm looking at the definition that's being crossed out. Where they specifically say not for use as a permanent dwelling. And I just wonder if we need to make it really, really clear. That RVs are not to be used as a permanent. I mean, it needs to be really clear, you cannot use this as a permanent residence, even though it says used as a temporary dwelling. Because people could come in and say, oh, well, yeah, I'm only gonna be there temporarily, and, you know, every time, a year later, they're, oh, I'm still here temporarily. When it's, do we need to put a time limit?
Well, this is what we need to check, because this is the definition, so you don't really need, and it's used as a temporary dwelling. You need a prohibition in your code that prohibits RVs being used in this.
And I think we already have that.
In about 30 days, like I can have my mom and dad kind of
Sure.
for like 30
Yeah.
days.
I'm talking about,
Pretty
I'm talking
independent.
9 months to a year.
But that's what I mean, it's already set in our ordinance for 30 days.
Okay,
And so that, I
The
don't,
definition doesn't matter as much as.
maybe we need to say, see, blah, blah, blah in Hulu.
Well,
To the-
RV
refer
is
to the
in
chapter.
one place in there.
We have people that stay at the resort for 3 months.
Yeah, that's that,
If their zone could be allowed.
Yeah, that's because they're in that zone.
And there, it's,
Yes.
yeah, they're talking about like somebody that moved onto your property, you can't let them live there permanently.
for example, the
Only
RV
the
that's,
30 days.
for example, the RV that's parked over there, by that fourplex on Pocketville Road, they cannot rent that out. And
Even if rent or not, the way it's written in our ordinance, even if it's just my mom staying in it for 30 days, she can't stay more than 30 days.
Yeah.
That's to be.
But do you need the language and is used as a temporary dwelling? I don't think you need that.
just
You need
say,
to define what it is.
you just say,
And
a
on
total
this, you
fire
say-
truck for travel and recreation purposes.
I want to make sure I'm not missing anything, because we already have the prohibition in the code. There's no reason we need to define an RV as being used as a temporary dwelling. We just need to define an RV and then prohibit it in the code being used as a permanent dwelling.
So we could
And
say,
define what a
So you just
temporary.
take out as.
just take out, and is used as a temporary dwelling, and then the next sentence, and the rest it says for travel and recreation purposes.
But I want to make sure Kent and Sean here, I'm not missing anything as to why that language was suggested with that.
Probably because people are living in them.
Yes.
That's probably what it, right? Sean, is that why the language is in there? It says temporary dwelling because people are technically living in them.
But we have a prohibition in the code.
You're both right.
Yeah,
Just make it.
We-
I like
yeah, that was very diplomatic, that's good.
Answer.
John, you'll make a nice call.
Take it in.
Okay, yeah, I can cross that out, so long as we have the prohibition
Elsewhere.
defined where we need it defined. I just don't want the argument to come in to say, I'm using it as a permanent dwelling, therefore it doesn't really apply in your code. So I know people come up with ingenious arguments.
Yeah, exactly.
A loophole.
A loophole, yeah.
Love it.
Okay, RV pad, a location on an RV lot or campground constructed of gravel, asphalt, concrete, designed to provide proper support and drainage replacement of an RV, and where possible, having amenities such as sewer or electrical or communications connections. I have no problem with that. Recreational vehicle and travel trailer park. An area or tract of land where lots, sites, units, or pads are rented and held for rent to one owner or user for a temporary time. This was moved from the B section, oh, B for vehicle, okay. What are you searching?
Oh, I'm just searching the. Where it says that not to exceed.
See the 180 days, okay.
That's what it's-
So I'm good with that one, and then that just, the last thing is they're removing the definition rubbish. Because he's saying remove rubbish and replace it with the American word trash. Did you find the 180 days? I I just realized as I was moving on to the last R that you were
Go ahead,
still,
you guys.
you were still
Go
looking.
ahead, go ahead, roll.
Did you find it though?
I'm looking at it right now. I have to find exactly where it's at.
So it does say not to exceed 180 days, somewhere about, in an
I
R.
believe it does, because I know it's worth, it's worth it 38.
Are you looking under these, under?
I don't see it, there's an actual chapter called recreation, vehicle and travel trailers. And I don't see it in
Six,
26,
which number, 2606, and then where is, oh, there it is, yep, it's there.
where,
It's
Oh,
in
there it is.
2606, and it's an A and item 6.
shall not be occupied more than 90 days in any one 180-day period.
Right.
All right. Then the last R was, the removal of the definition rubbish and replacing that with the definition of trash. Okay. Okay. So next time, we will review the S's, which is a bigger group.
I'll go back to trash and look at the key. Run down that.
For some reason, I thought there were a whole lot more definitions than there really are. I see that. I thought this was pages and pages of definitions.
It's really not that bad. If
Okay,
we think we could do it fast, we can go through these last 2 pages.
We should have moved the meeting on, so it's really nice.
is it out there? I was gonna say, we definitely can finish them up next time and get it done. And our next meeting in June. Oh, this is June,
This is.
sorry.
So when's the meeting in July?
Second, oh. I'm glad you brought that up.
We need to roll on anyway, so.
No, I'm glad you brought that up because Jean asked me if we could move our work meetings from the first Thursday or the second Thursday of every month. He said that there is a Republican Party meeting on the second Thursday of every month in St. George that he likes to go to. He has not been going to any of them because he's been coming to the work meetings. And he really wants to go to those meetings. So he asked if we could change our meeting to a different day. So that it does not conflict with those meetings. But he did not tell me what days work for him. But he wanted me to bring this up to you guys.
Tuesdays are better for me.
Tuesdays are better for you? And I don't know that I have any issues with Tuesdays myself.
Leroy, is Tuesday, will Tuesdays mess with you? I mean, we're already doing
No,
Tuesdays.
Tuesday's fine.
We're doing the 4th Tuesday of every month.
Third.
3rd.
So just doing it like 2 weeks before or 1 week
One week
before?
before.
1 week before. So if we move it to Tuesdays, that means in July, it would be on the 11th.
I'm all right with it, except I don't know what plans I have already made in light of it, but that's all right. It's a work session, we'll work along it.
You don't wanna stick with the first.
Sorry, I was
gonna
looking,
go to like the first Tuesday or.
Well, if you did the first Tuesday, you're on the 4th of July.
yeah,
Well, we could alter that one because of the holiday, but I mean, like,
I don't
looking at
like,
the rest of the calendar, do we want to do the first Tuesdays or do we want to just stick with the second? Oh, speaking of that,
we are just now addressing your question of changing the date of the meeting, so you can perfect. Because we were just looking at changing it to Tuesdays. Tuesdays work for you. Because this is the last thing, then we're done.
Yeah.
So if Tuesdays work for you, we were just looking at when our next meeting would be in July. And we were discussing the first Tuesday of the month versus the second Tuesday of the month. And that's what we were talking about when you walked in the door.
I appreciate everybody to do this, but it's not gonna kill me or anything else.
Oh, Ms. Steve said that Tuesdays work better for her. What were you saying, Paul?
I'm saying, I've already made certain plans, but I don't remember what they are.
Oh,
But if the work session, go ahead and move it to Tuesdays and on those, I'll see what I can work out and then I can. That's all right, I just said I'm missing.
okay, so the question is first Tuesday or second Tuesday? If we do it second Tuesday, we're the day before planning commission. 'Cause
Well, I'm
planning-
gonna tell you what, you guys are gonna be kind of bouncing around anyways for some meetings with dates and stuff,
because the holiday season is.
the holidays and elections and stuff, so.
Let's get ready.
I think at this point, you guys should pick a date and say what's our next work meeting for the next,
Like July 11th.
July
and then
11th.
make it work.
Okay. So will that work with you? July 11th for our next work meeting?
Yes. Sorry, I'm trying to email still.
Oh, about, adding 5,000 to
I
the
know that
law enforcement?
I have a meeting until 1 o'clock tomorrow. Crystal,
Well, yeah.
I'm asking Sil to send you the new revised budget with those changes by tomorrow.
Okay,
And I'll check with you.
I'll let you know if I have it, I'll text you on Sunday if I have it,
That's right, tomorrow's Friday, isn't it?
yeah, not working on Friday.
Well, you work all the time.
Huh, for some reason in July, I didn't even have the work meeting on my calendar. It's strange.
I had it on the 13th, actually.
Okay, yeah, we're moving it to the
We're
11th.
moving it
Okay,
to Tuesday.
okay. All right. So
Motion to adjourn.
motion to adjourn.
Motion second.
Okay, all in favor? Misty did. All in favor?
Aye.
And I got a couple more meetings.
Yes.
You are our inspiration.
Get out of here, please.
I don't know if it was- that-
Before, yeah, and I